if you look at the list of countries that are most represented at the 2024 Olympics by most athletes, it goes the United States, number one, which makes sense. Number two is France, and number three is Australia. Now, this was interesting to me because obviously we have a much smaller population than both France and the USA, and certainly other countries that are below us, China, India, what have you. So, Danette, I was wondering, did you have any insights about sort of sports in Australia and why it is that we're so overrepresented at the Olympics?
So I love that particular statistic, Jez, because while we are, in terms of landmass, quite a large country, we are quite a small population for that size. And I think part of being an Australian, and it doesn't matter what culture you come from, part of being Australian is the whole we have to adapt because our climate is weird. You know, we have some extremes in climate here. And I think that sports is part of our culture. So I live on a farm, and I know that the local towns around us on Saturday afternoons are often deserted because the entire town is following different sports codes, and they're either playing or they're cheering or they're volunteering for those particular sports things. And I think part of that, what makes us great athletes too, is sometimes, you know, depending on where the person has grown up, they've had to adapt how they train to get to that world-class level. I saw a video the other day of someone and they were swimming up a canal, and that was their sort of starting career as a swimmer. And I was like, you know, there'd be kids who are in dams swimming. There'd be people running up roads and there's brown snakes coming across the road as they're running. So I think that, you know, it is part of our culture, whether you like whether you're a player or not. I think that people just go, let's get behind these people who've got to that elite level. I know that the government has invested in our athletes as well because they see that it is something really important. And I think it's just part of our give it a go, let's give it a whirl and try different things. And then people, you know, some sports people are good at a number of sports and then they'll focus on maybe one or two. And I think as part of our culture, we invest in that and, you know, really support, you know, whether it's the Olympics, the Paralympics, the high-level world games and that sort of stuff. We just love being part of that as Australians, and we definitely punch above our weight. What about you, Chiz? What do you reckon?
Well, I mean, I think a couple of those things are right. So I think, you know, just to give people an idea that are listening from outside of Australia, Australia's population is approximately 26 million people.
Yes.
To kind of put that in context, Canada has 38 million and California has 39 million. And Australia is roughly the size of, you know, America, land mass wise. We're pretty similar. So that to give you an idea of the population spread out is a lot of spread out areas, and so I think that there's a lot of outside, so a lot of people playing outside. I definitely think a huge deal is the government investing in it because, you know, I think there's a lot of other countries that have a lot of sparse land, but without the resources, people aren't going to really succeed. I think a great example, however, of the inverse of that is the country South Sudan this year in the Olympics. They won their first ever Olympics basketball game, and they don't have a single indoor court in their whole country.
Wow,
so
good on them.
They're really amazing, and they almost beat the US. They lost by 2 points. So it's really, for them, a hugely successful Olympics, and we have to celebrate that as well. But I think another thing that's been really big for Australia, sort of slightly under the radar, but also, you know, in some areas quite important, is that a lot of our golds have been won by women. And I think that actually is important because I think it speaks to Australia's broader sporting context in that we want everybody to be successful at sports, and that includes our women. But I think maybe our women are involved in sports for a little bit longer than they might be in other cultures. That may be some element of it, you know, where it's with more of a government investment in the youth league sports, that gives them more of an opportunity to actually sort of play it more professionally. But there is one interesting example that I think really sums this up in some ways, and I think it's a good example of both countries. So my partner's from India, Kanika. She works at Magical Learning, does social medias, newsletter, does everything.
Does awesome.
And we were in India. Yeah, it is awesome. And we were in India in December, and for them, they had big banners everywhere for people that had achieved a GCSE score of 99. You know, they would have a big banner with the person's photo and everything, and everybody that achieved in the 90s would be smaller images underneath them. And this was to celebrate these kids. Congratulations, great effort on their high schooling. And when I think of Australia, I think you'd be more likely to see that for someone who, is representing Australia in a certain, in
So
rugby
true.
or something, you're more likely to see that. So I
Yes.
think it's also culturally how we set up
Yes.
the country, where we celebrate sporting achievements probably more than academic achievements in this country.
Yes, that's so true, Jez. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, neither had I until I was there, and I was like, oh, we don't have these. We probably have something else.